This is a talk on adventure radio in Europe by Phil Catterall, Golf 4 Oscar Bravo Kilo. Phil will talk about the main 4 adventure radio programs, mainly consisting of Summits on the Air, or SOTA as most people know it, and what is involved in planning a successful low-power HF portable expedition in UK and in Europe. The licensing, the travel, the navigation, some useful websites and online tools will be explained, enable anyone to leave their shacks and successfully enjoy the excitement of amateur radio in the outdoors whilst on holiday or on a dedicated amateur radio adventure tour. Phil started shortwave listening in 1968 and got his license as G4OBK in 1982. He is a DXer and is top of the ARRL honour roll with 340 mixed. As a contester, Phil has been the annual RSGB HF contest champion 5 times. In 2005, he started operating portable summits on the air, on HF and VHF, in CW and in phone, combining his 2 interests of fell walking and amateur radio. This has led to him travelling around Europe, operating extensively on SOTA D expeditions with his XYL on holiday or on dedicated adventure radio exhibitions solo or with other licensed friends. Phil has now completed more than 1,200 successful SOTA activations on over 1,050 unique summits throughout Europe and in Australia. So Phil, over to you and thank you.
Good morning everybody, thanks for attending. The General Manager, Steve, invited me to give this presentation because I wrote an article in Radcom, as published last June, about an activation holiday for SOTA in Portugal. So that's why I'm here. We've got a sedentary hobby. We sit in our shacks. Once our stations are built, we sit in our shacks and we enjoy ourselves operating or construction, whatever. I think that's not really good for you, is it? You know, long term. You need to get out of your shack if you can. Set your gear up. It takes 10 minutes, once you're experienced, to set an HF station up on the top of a hill or a mountain. So that's quite important, I think. Now, there are 4 or 5 outdoor programs that class as adventure radio. The first and foremost one is probably the first of the 4 or 5 Summits on the Air, started in 2002. That's the one I take part in. But you've also got Parks on the Air now, Worldwide Flora and Fauna, and GMA, Global Mountain Award. So there is an overlap. I don't know very much about the other 3 programs I've just mentioned, but if you're going to take part in one of the programs, and some are easier, some you can take part in from your vehicle. Summits on the Air you can't. You've got to use an independent power supply and be away from any vehicle. So decide on your program and go for it. Now, I'm not going to talk about setting up an amateur radio station and how to operate portable. I'm going to leave that to David that's in the room over there, G0EVV. So if you want to know about the technicalities of setting a station up, come to room 2 tomorrow at 9:15. David will give you all the information. So, travelling to unfamiliar places, something that's always interested me, going to new places, somewhere you haven't been before. It is an adventure. You're going into the unknown, but you can do a terrific amount of research to make sure that your visit to these places is a success in terms of operating. Going to other countries, well, SOTA and probably the other schemes as well is a very sociable part of the hobby. We have reflectors, and there's a lot of communications take place on the internet between participants. And what you find is when you go to a country such as Belgium, Portugal, Luxembourg, wherever, amateurs that are into Summits on the Air want to meet you. They go out of the way to arrange meetings. Sometimes they turn up unannounced on the summit, as one did with me in France 2 weeks ago. Fox 5 Lima Kilo Whiskey. This guy came walking towards me in fluorescent walking gear and said, "My name's Roger, F5KW. We've had hundreds of QSOs." So we had a good chat and a meeting, got around the language barrier to some extent, and quite often they give you little gifts. I've had things like fridge magnets, Belgian chocolates, flags, key rings given to me from meetings with guys in their own country. Now you've got to decide what sort of trip are you going to embark upon. Are you going to go solo? Are you going to go with your partner or your XYL? That depends on your sort of family situation and the patience of your partner, of course. Or with an amateur radio friend. I've done all three of those. They're equally enjoyable. You've got to pick the right people that you go with. You've got to find an operator perhaps that works the same way as you, because you're probably going to set two stations up on the summit, maybe 50 to 100 metres apart. So that is quite important. But so it's whatever fits your situation. Now, what got me started? Well, 2005, I was getting a bit jaded with working DX from home. I was looking for something else in the hobby. I was in my early 50s at the time. I'm not far off 70 now. I thought I would have a go at SOTA. It really is addictive. It's a good program. It's very well managed. Excellent database for submitting logs. Very transparent. So it is a great program. What are the differences between operating adventure radio in the UK and in Europe? Well, there are quite a few actually. It's a lot easier to operate adventure radio in Europe. Main reason for that is that the tree line, once you get sort of into Germany and parts of France, the tree line is 650 metres, 1,500 metres above sea level. So you're going to get deciduous trees on hills and mountains that are higher than Ben Nevis. Well, we all know how inhospitable the tops of the mountains are in the Lake District and Snowdonia. Often in Europe, you're sat in the middle of a wood operating your amateur radio equipment, and the activation zone that extends to 25 metres below the highest point, you can often not find a clear area to erect an amateur radio antenna. So you're operating within trees. Yet on HF, things work reasonably well. I've undertaken 27 of these trips, like I say. What do you need to carry? Now, you've got to decide, are you going to go by own car, or are you going to travel by air and hire a car? So that's the two options. If you take your own car across the channel via the tunnel or the boat, fine, you can carry anything you want in the car. It's unlikely that the car gets searched. If you're travelling by air, it's a bit different. You have to be careful what you take. And I brought a few props here. This is what I call my Ryanair bag, because that is the sort of bag you can take on board a Ryanair or an EasyJet flight at no cost. That contains the essential radio equipment and electronics, and some of the things you cannot put in a suitcase. You're not allowed to. Headphones and a battery lead, KX3 in an old mobile phone case with Morse key fixed to the front in my case. That's how I like to use it. I've got a couple of mobile phones. Always carry two on different networks. I use those for alerting my activity to the SOTA community on the internet. A handheld for 2 meters. If I'm with another operator, we may need to communicate. I don't often operate VHF on these trips, but it's there if I need it. But the most important thing are these two little things, lithium batteries. And the airline companies are paranoid about these things because they can catch fire. If you carry one like that, by the way, always make sure that you put some insulation tape around the terminal. So they're in the case. They're both 4 amp batteries. That's the tracer one. That is near the limit of what you're allowed to carry as a spare battery in your hand luggage. 96 watt hours. Well, they're 48 apiece. 12 volt batteries, 4 amps. That one will run that station, that KX3 at 10 watts for probably all day, operated from maybe 4 or 5 locations. You probably make 120, 150 rubber stamp QSO short contacts with either of those 2 batteries. But carry 2 because towards the end of the day, it may run out and you've got your spare. So you carry them in your hand luggage by law, by air transportation law. If you take tablets, as I do, make sure your medication's in your hand luggage. A tablet and your license, along with your HAREC certificate, your HAREC certificate. If you haven't got one of those, and I hadn't because I've been licensed quite a long time, Ofcom will actually send you that via email and you can print it off. So you can request that, no problems. That's about it in the hand luggage. Now, cost-wise, if you're using one of the cheap carriers, the best way of carrying your stuff is to take out a 20 kilogram or a 23 suitcase. And the rucksack that you're going to use on your activations will actually be carried in the suitcase, inside the suitcase. But inside the suitcase for amateur radio on your adventure trip, first thing you need is a 5 meter pole or a 6 meter pole. That's 57 centimeters long. That'll support your half-wave end fed or your dipole. Don't be tempted to try to carry that in the compartment of in the passenger compartment, because I know a chap that tried. I have got away with it up to about 3 years ago, but a chap was stopped and was told that he could use it as a baton, and that he had to put it into the hold. Well, he didn't have any protection. Lucky for him, it got there. But put that in your suitcase. Laptop, essential for keeping in touch with home and for submitting your logs if you can every day, which people appreciate. If they've had a contact with you, they can check the QSOs. If I'm going on my own or with my XYL, know that amateur where we could share the radio. I do operate on CW most of the time. I carry a spare radio. That's a Chinese UKITS HB1B. It's a 4-band transceiver. Never had to use it yet, but if I had a major breakdown, having shelled out hundreds of pounds for the trip, I don't want to be without a radio. So that's that. That would be in the rucksack. To go with that radio, I have a palm key. Little palm key. You can't get these now because the firm's stopped trading, but as well. And the all-important antenna. Again, in the suitcase, I got some bungees there and a bit of rope, a guy but quite often in Europe there are things to fasten your antenna to. Not always the case in UK. You can find a tree or a post or even a picnic table in a lot of cases. Because the tree line being so high, roads quite often go over the tops of summits. So you do several activations in a day and barely walk any distance and still be within the rules for summits on the air. So a few tent pegs and a few little tools like a knife, a screwdriver, in case you have to do any small repairs to your antenna. That's the antenna. It's a link dipole. That's for 40 meters, 30 meters and 20 meters. homemade, fed with RG174, I think it is the coax, a BNC plug. That's it, that's your whole station. Okay. So, how much does it cost? Well, accommodation is cheaper in Europe than it is in UK. And quite often, if you want a single room, as we often do, if I go with a friend, he can't stand people snoring and going to the toilet in the middle of the night, etc. So we always have our own rooms. Well, often you don't pay a single supplement in Europe, but you always do in the UK. That's a picture of me operating on Delta Lima Alpha Mike 001 in Germany, Piesenberg, and that was a summit that you could drive to. There was a tourist cabin on the top, so it was drizzling a bit that day. A couple of chairs there had been left by someone, tourist board, whatever. Set your station up, FT817 at the time, which is what I was using, and away we go. Now, you've got to decide whether you want to do it independently or do you want to book a package holiday. You can do it either way. Package holiday, chewy, people like that. Mallorca's an excellent destination. Portugal again. Lots of summits, some quite easy to get to, particularly Portugal. There are a lot of wind farms there. And they're not private. You can just drive on to a wind farm, park your vehicle, set your station up 100 metres away, perfectly within the rules. Getting radio gear through security, like you saw me taking stuff out the bags. It's very important when you get to the airport, whether it's Manchester, wherever, get the plastic tray and any electronic, take it out of the case, expose it, and more often than not, there are no questions asked. You're straight through. Leave it in the case. You're more likely to get asked questions. Last time I went through Manchester in June, I took everything out, two plastic trays, and the lady said to me, "Oh, great, you can come again." You know, that's very good of her. I've told you about the bags. Car hire. If you're going to hire a car, it varies from place to place. A good hub is Prague. And from Prague, Czech Republic, there's plenty of flights there from all over the UK. And car hire is extremely cheap. You can get a vehicle in Prague, an average size saloon or a small estate car, for around about £150 a week. You know, it's great. Great. So that's something to think about. We normally use the booking agents such as Auto Europe. Do You Spain is another one, but they don't just do Spain. You can get a good deal if you shop around online. Insurance, well, you can get an annual car hire insurance for around about £40 to £50. And that will cover you for up to 90 days on multiple trips. And quite often, if you're just going to do one trip, it's cheaper to buy that. In case you do another one later in the year, it will cost you about the same for an annual policy as the car hire company are likely to charge you at the desk. So that's worth thinking about. Non-tourist destinations that are the best for hiring cars in terms of price. Mallorca, Canaries, they'll pay a bit more, but if you shop around, you can get a reasonable deal there. The last trip I did where we flew was in June when I went to Friedrichshafen from Prague, drove from Prague. We hired a car for 12 days. It was a Kia Proceed estate car, almost brand new. 12 days car rental, £258. So split two ways, not bad at all. Planning an itinerary, this is so important. It could take up a few days of your time. In terms of man hours, that trip I just spoke about, the 12-day trip, we visited 36 locations. We set stations up in 36 different places, and we spent 2 days at Friedrichshafen. But to plan that probably took me 20 man hours, something like that, so that we went exactly to the place we wanted in turn, 5 locations a day in some cases in Bavaria. So I want to talk about that, how you produce an itinerary, how you alert your activity, and that's done with the trusty mobile phone. Can't show this on screen, but there's an app called SOTA Spotter by YO3SAW. It's free of charge, excellent app, works on Android phones. I think it works on iPhones as well. I would recommend that. That's how you alert on the day. So when you get on the top of the hill, get your station set up, alert on that. Within 5 minutes, you've got an instant pilot. People sat at home, not tuning around. We use specific, approximate frequencies. So if you're into CW, 40 meters, 7032, 2 or 3 kilohertz, either side of that is a favourite spot. 7118 on sideband. People know where to find you, and you will enjoy the pile-ups. You will be Mr. or Miss Popular. Everybody wants a contact with you. So usually on these trips we operate for 30 to 45 minutes on every summit, so something like that, on up to 3 bands in CW and SSB. And you probably make 20 to 50 contacts each in that time. Just working people, sort of contest style, but you know a lot of the operators' names, so it's common for me when I can remember people's names. Much easier at home with a computer, but to give the name and a signal report. Keep it short. You can easily work 1 a minute when they're queuing up to work you, which they tend to do. That's using 10 watts in a resonant half-wave dipole. There are lots of web tools available. The 2 main ones that I use to plan an itinerary are Sortless by Manuel, HB9DQM, and SOTA Mapping by Rob, DM1CM. The SOTA Mapping one has been in use for over 10 years now. Sortless is probably 5 years old. They're both excellent. That particular photograph shows a route that I took, actually. That is a GPX track taken from a smartphone, uploaded to the Sortless website for sharing with other amateurs that may want to go there. That's about the easiest way to climb that. Not a particularly difficult climb either. It was 116 meters of ascent from a guest house there, place to get a drink, you know, when you get back down. 20 minutes walk time, 600 meters walk, 10-point summit. 10 points. You couldn't do that in the UK. That summit's called Proller. The use of these tools and apps are all free. There's no charge at all. Most of these sort of programs use an enhanced version of OpenStreetMap, Worldwide OpenStreetMap, which is a worldwide community project, and it is excellent. It really is. These tools offer server support, so you can back up all your information and look back on it years ahead, or and you can also import the points of all the summits for each country into your smartphone app. I'll come on to the app I use for navigation while I'm walking as well. So what do I use now for navigation with my phone while I'm there? Well, you can use paper maps. I do still use paper maps, but what I use now is a program called Locus. Operates on Android. Like I say, it uses the Worldwide OpenStreetMap enhanced, That is available free of charge. But if you want the bells and whistles, you tend to have to pay a subscription or a purchase price for that country map. This particular one, Locus, I have no financial interest in this software, by the way. I'm just a user. It's version 4 at the moment with server support. The basic product is free of charge. Download it from Google Play. Silver gives you some benefits. Gold is the one you want if you're serious. That works out at about £20 a year. That gives you full server support, the ability to plan. It is excellent. It's owned by a company in the Czech Republic. All the help files are in English, and it's very, very well supported. You can import GPX files of summits country by country, and you can import tracks, either your own tracks after you've walked them within the app, or you can download other people's tracks from that. That's an example of the mapping. It's difficult to see in my hand here, but that's the one I would recommend, and it's well worth learning how to use it to get the best out of it. That is the planner for that particular software on PC. Again, showing the same summit, the clarity. You've got all the contours there, you see, so you can work out from the side there the amount of ascent, the distance walked. Really useful stuff. So, get all this information at home on your PC and plan yourself an itinerary. And although you won't be able to see the detail on there too well, not too bad. That is what I tend to produce, all those 24 hours of work planning where we go. And that enables you to do a successful adventure radio tour. Now, you look at the headings on line 2. I've got the summit references and the day the activity's planned, the number of points that can be earned that day from each of the summits that you plan to do. Some details of the name of the summit or where you're going to be staying that night if you're moving on. Little things like that. The height of the summit, the parking place. Now, this is what takes the time. Studying the mapping, the 2 websites I told you about, SOTA or SOTA mapping, trying to work out where the nearest road is where you can get an access point to the summit. Not only that as well, information is widely shared, so the people that have been there before, you can do a search for that particular summit. You can find out if you can drive to the top or if you've got to walk. Importantly, is it within my capabilities? You know, you've got to know your capabilities when you're doing summits on there. You've got to take on things that you're confident you can complete. You know, don't decide without any practice that you're going to climb Ben Nevis one day if you haven't climbed Scafell Pike, you know, things like that. So you get to know your capabilities, so plan your itinerary based on that. You can use Google Street View in most countries to work out possible car parking places from the access points. And most satellite navigation built into cars these days, or your portable TomTom, you can input that information, latitude, longitude, for all your parking places. So the only thing with that, there's a tendency to rely on satellite navigation too much. You must make sure you are absolutely correct. Check and double check that those lat longs are correct. Because if you get it wrong, you could be driving 20, 30 miles out of your way and getting into a real problem. It hasn't happened to me, fortunately. So that's useful. How far are you going to walk? That's an assessment. As you can see, on that particular trip, the activations we did, the longest walk there is about 1.8k. Oh no, there's a 2 metre one there towards the bottom, each way, and the amount of ascent and the approximate time where you think you're going to be on the air, and you can alert those times on SOTA Watch. If there's 2 of you in the vehicle, the navigator, which is usually me, if I'm with a friend, I can adjust the alert times on SOTA Watch so that people know that you're going to be late. Quite useful as you're driving to the point. You can do a sort of reassessment. Comments, any useful tips you might pick up off the map or from people's previous reports are useful. Driving time, roughly from point to point, you can get that from AA website where you put 2 place names in and get a rough approximation, and the distance from point to point, you know. So, typical day, the first day there after we left Prague. The following morning we activated 4 summits. We drove approximately 200 miles that day as well. We got a 150-mile piece there. That was down to near to Munich. But you got a 30-minute driving time, 33. Yeah, you get the idea from that. So that's very well worth doing. We'll leave that on the slide because that gives you some useful references to look at on the internet. Catterall, that's a blog that I've written over the last 10 years or so. A lot of information on there, and the other 3 websites I've already mentioned. So that's about it. I'm happy to take any questions now, please.
Thank you, Phil. And are there any questions, please?
What determines how long you actually spend on the air at each location?
That's a good question. The number of people that want to work you, basically. We sort of set a maximum on these trips because we're trying to cram as many activations in the day. We set a maximum operating time of about 45 minutes. Often, you might work it down on 40 metres, so there's nothing left in less than half an hour. If there's 2 operators and you're both happy that things are drying up, ideally you want to be able to work 3 bands because the propagation differs from band to band. But 30 to 45 minutes is an average time. As soon as it dries up, pack up, 10 minutes to pack up, stuff in the bag, back to the car, and off to the next place.
How many QSOs at that time?
Anything up to 50, Stuart. Yeah. You'd be disappointed if you work less than 10 people. You only need 4 contacts to qualify.
Oh, right, okay. So you've got to do a number before...
You've got to do 4, yeah. Yeah, you need 4. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. David, G4ERW. I started SOTA in the last couple of years and really enjoying it. Not as ambitious as you, but I started using, as you say, you have a lot of contacts. I find that within half an hour, you have 50 contacts. So I took a laptop up with me
Good for
to
you.
these summits, but it's getting a little bit, even though it's a small laptop. What do you use for logging?
Right in the rain logbook.
Okay.
It's a small logbook. I haven't got it with me, I don't think, today. No, I haven't. But small logbook with pencil. If it rains, the pencil won't stop working. The Right in the Rain logbook is a spiral-bound logbook. Contains about 100 pages. That'll last me 50 activations, It's line pages. If it rains, you can still write. You take a biro and paper, it might blow away. So some people do use laptops, some people use smartphones, but I find on CW it slows me down. There's nothing faster than listen to a call sign, take it in your head, go back to the guy. Fortunately, some of us can return it and then put it in the logbook while he's coming back to you. A memory keyer on the KX3, send a 7.3 and on to the next contact.
What logging system do you put it in when you get back?
When I get back, I use a free application called SAISI SOTA. S-A-I-S-I-E, SAISI SOTA. There are several around. That'll produce a CSV or an ADIF log for importing into your main program. As a main program, I use Logger 32. So that goes into my logging program. Once you produce a CSV or an ADIF log, you can import that into the SOTA database. So try to do that on the same day as the activation where possible.
Do any of the activists do what the satellite guys do and just take a recording of everything so that they can do an after-the-fact log?
Only if you've forgotten your logbook. No, yeah, I think one or two do actually, Stuart. Yes.
Anyone else got any questions? Over there.
Cheers.
You're on.
It was one question just about how you handle other people on the summits and the general public coming up to you. Have you had any trouble in Europe with that sort of thing?
I've had trouble in Wales once by a guy that didn't like me talking into a handheld, a 2 metre handheld on summit, but no, generally speaking, no. Quite often, if you're wearing phones, they're reluctant to bother you. If you're not wearing phones, you've got a microphone in your hand, then you might get approached. People are curious. And of course, you get the usual jokes, like, are you talking to the Germans? Are you talking to the Russians? And of course you say, yes, you are.
I've had something similar running. I've done portable work, but not SOTA. I'm hoping to get into it. I've only had my license a year.
Yeah.
I was running a 2 metre Yagi, and someone asked me if I was watching TV.
Oh, right. Yeah, all right. That's a new one. Yeah, that's it, James. Yeah.
It may not be your thing, but are many people, is anybody using digital modes like FT8?
Yeah. They've started, and if I'm chasing from home, I don't like to miss them. Sometimes I do. I'm not fast enough, but there's a couple of French guys keen. There's one guy in this country, Tom M1 EYP, using FT8 quite a lot. No RITI that I'm aware of. There's one guy tried a bit of PSK, didn't make a lot of contacts, but FT8, if you're prepared to carry the necessary small laptop, that is popular. You alert your activity in FT8, you'll get lots of contacts on 20, 40, 30 meters. Yeah.
How do you transmit the peak identifier in FT8?
Some of the activators use the F5 key in WSJT. But generally speaking, people pick it up from the SOTA Watch website because the guy alerts himself.
Oh, right. That's essentially done out of band.
Yeah, but some of the operators do. Every 2 or 3 QSOs, they send the F5 where you can enter data with the reference. Yeah.
Any other questions? No, I don't see any. Last call. So thank you very much, Phil. Very interesting talk.
Good.
And hopefully we'll get some more people up on the mountains.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.